Recording is live.
All right. Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, moderator for today's event, and I welcome you. We have a great event on tap, as always, but before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items we need to go over. First of all, today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of the event, you will have the opportunity to access it later on. Following today's webinar, we will be sending out an email that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And we are taking questions from the audience. So if at any time during today's presentation you have a question for our speaker, please don't wait, don't hesitate, just use the question and answer tab on your interface and submit your questions, and we will try to get to as many as we can near the end of today's webinar. We also have a couple polling questions during the webinar, and I certainly hope that everybody engages with those. And we also have a very public chat feature. So if you've got a question, comment, suggestion, whatever you want to share with us, please go ahead and use that public chat feature, and we'll chat you back, and we might actually even get you involved in the presentation. And then finally, at the end of today's webinar, we are going to be doing a drawing for 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So please stick around. Hopefully you will be one of our 4 lucky winners. All right, with that, let's go ahead and kick off today's webinar, which is Comprehensive Ransomware Protection and Recoverability for Cloud Native Applications. Our speaker today is Ben Morrison, who is a solutions architect at Trilio, and he may or may not, I hope he will, be joined by Prashanto Kochavara at the question and answer session, who might hopefully be able to answer perhaps some of the more technical questions that might come up. So Ben, thank you so much for joining. I am super excited because you've got a presentation and a couple really cool demos. So I'm going to shut up now and put myself on mute and let you get right into your presentation.
Thank you so much, Charlene. As she said, my name is Ben Morrison. I'm a solutions architect here at Trilio. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I want to do a quick thank you to DevOps for having us on here, and also a little shout out to Red Hat as well, who's a sponsor of this webinar today. So first and foremost, we're going to go over a bit of the plan, or a bit of the, excuse me, we'll just do the slides there. We're going to go over some of the use cases of Kubernetes as it is in the DevOps space. We're going to talk a bit about the use of Kubernetes and then go into a bit of a problem statement, talking about ransomware. Thirdly, we'll go into our solution, Trilio, and how it works to help you when it comes to ransomware and restoring backups to avoid any sort of ransomware attack and having to pay those awful ransoms, and then get a bit more into the details with a demo at the end. So first and foremost, just a quick overview of the personas that manage those cloud native applications. Obviously, as many of you developers out there know, there's many steps in the CI/CD pipelines. You have many users throughout the life cycle of your applications running in Kubernetes. You have developers such as Lisa on the far left here. You have some GitOps and DevOps and SREs such as Rob and Brian. And you have some operations specialists as well as Jane. And so with so many people in this chain here, there's obviously always going to be a lot of vulnerability when it comes to ransomware attacks. So it's very important that you have the backup plans and the backups themselves to help recover from a ransomware attack. And you also feel comfortable in the security of those backups to not be disrupted. So ransomware attacks are, of course, on the rise, as many of us know these days. The definition of a ransomware attack is that is a type of cyber attack where a malicious actor or an organization is going to use software to try to access the data of an organization. In this situation, it would be the data sitting on a Kubernetes cluster. Once they access that data, they're going to try to encrypt it and then hold it for ransom, and in telling you, at least saying that they will unlock it, but possibly might not even unlock it. Some statistics here, with 300 million cases of ransomware attacks happen every single year. There is no guarantee, as I just said here, that an attacker will actually unlock your data, possibly after that payment is made, they could keep it locked and continue to ask for more payment, or even end up deleting the data and resulting in permanent loss. The average cost of a ransomware attack has increased over the past year and is now up to $300,000 is the average cost of a given ransomware attack. We also have seen that during the pandemic, unfortunately, ransomware attacks have increased by 72%. And a lot of this is largely due to the fact that there's increased business data over mobile devices. Everyone working from home, using their personal laptops, different laptops that are not in the office system, or using their mobile phones. This just results in more vulnerabilities and has caused those vulnerabilities to be up by 50%. So obviously a very big issue, ransomware, we've seen in the news many times. And so we here at Trilio want to make sure that you, our users, have all of the security you can to have those backups restored in the event of a ransomware attack. Before we get into the solution itself of Trilio and what we do, just do a little bit of background about Trilio Vault. We were founded in 2013. So you can have confidence that we are not a completely new backup and recovery solution. We've been around for some time. We've had a lot of business in other product areas outside of Kubernetes, which would be OpenStack and Red Hat virtualization. And so here you can trust that we have experience and we really know what we're doing in this space. We have a patented technology. We have a global engineering, sales, and services team all around the world, in Germany and in EMEA and South America, all over the place, and of course, North America as well. We serve every type of enterprise out there, large enterprises and both commercial as well, in the defense space, automotive, telco, as well as MSPs. We've received $22 million in VC funding from some of the top VCs out there. We also have a global partnership ecosystem with other distributions and other companies in especially the Kubernetes space. And lastly, we have a few certifications out there as a certified operator or certified Kubernetes tool. And those certifications are from Red Hat, SUSE Rancher, VMware, Tanzu, and IBM. So now getting a bit into what Trilio Vault for Kubernetes is. Here we have a pane of glass here, that UI right here in the center. And first and foremost, if you haven't heard about Trilio before, we do backups on a application-centric level. This means that we believe it's very, very important for you to back up your applications, especially those stateful applications with data in their persistent volumes running on your Kubernetes cluster. And we choose how to go about backing up those applications in 4 different ways. You can do it by Helm, you can do it by namespace, by operator, or by label. Each of these 4 categories, you can select one of the 4, and Trilio will go in and automatically back up every single object, every piece of data and metadata associated with your application so it can be recovered at that exact point in time in a later date. We work on any CNCF certified distribution, and of course included upstream Kubernetes. We are certified with those that I listed beforehand: Red Hat, SUSE Rancher, VMware, Tanzu, and IBM, but we are still fully functional and often used on all of the other major distributions out there: EKS, GKS, AKS, all of those out there. So we are distribution agnostic. For our compatibility when it comes to target storage, this is where your backups are stored to outside of the cluster itself. For the sake of security reasons, we store those backups outside of the cluster itself so they can be pulled in later to the same cluster or an entirely different cluster in the event of needing to have a recovery, for example, a ransomware attack. And those targets, that storage, we are also storage agnostic. So we are compatible with any S3 compatible storage. You'll be seeing in our demos today that we will be using S3 for those targets. And we are also compatible with NFS if you want to use an NFS for your target to store those backups. And then lastly, a bit more about Trilio itself. we are also cloud agnostic. AWS, Google, Azure, any of those out there, IBM Cloud, or on-premises, public or private, you can use Trilio with. So here, just to paint the picture a bit on exactly how Trilio works, you have your Kubernetes cluster 1 here. Let's say this is your primary production cluster, for example, and you'll have, of course, your application running on that cluster. And within your application, you have your pods, your PVs, those secrets, config maps, all of that data and metadata labeled appropriately or correlated with the operator or helm or namespace of that application. Trilio then goes in and backs up all of that data, metadata, and objects of the application. It captures it and stores it into your NFS or S3 compatible target, that storage outside of the cluster itself. And then you can go in and pick any point in time where a backup has occurred and restore that backup back into the same cluster, restore the application exactly as it was before, or you can restore it in an entirely new cluster, that Kubernetes cluster 2 down there. So in the sake of our demo later on, you'll see we'll actually be using one cluster that we'll be backing up and then restoring back into. But in the event of wanting to have a failover, possibly, you could have a secondary cluster to immediately restore a backed up application into, and therefore reduce that RTO and have a second site ready to go with your application as exactly as it was in cluster 1. So now we have our first polling question. I think Jared's going to help me out with here. So our question for the audience here, we'd like to see what you are all thinking. Does your organization have a strategy for protecting Kubernetes applications from ransomware attacks?
Yeah, so the polling question should be on your screen now. As Matt said, Ben said, does your organization have a strategy for protecting Kubernetes applications from ransomware attacks? The answers are yes, no, or unsure. Super, super easy there. Go ahead and make your response now. We'll take a look at the responses here in a few seconds, and then we'll let the presentation continue. But while we are waiting for everybody to make their answers, make their responses there. Just a quick reminder that anytime during today's presentation, we've already gotten a couple of questions in already, but you can go ahead and submit your questions if you do have a question, and we will definitely get those answered for you. Okay, Ben, I'm going to go ahead and close it out now, and we'll take a look at the responses. All right, looks like of the folks who answered, does your organization have a strategy for protecting Kubernetes applications from ransomware? The overwhelming majority, 52%, said they are unsure. And then 26% said yes, and 22% said no. So that's an interesting makeup. What do you think about those responses, Ben?
I am a little surprised at the level of unsure, seeing that 52% is interesting. That, of course, always just depends on the crowd. But the yes and no even split, I'm not as surprised about. It seems like some organizations out there are taking steps towards having a strategy to protect against those ransomware attacks, and some just haven't quite gotten there yet. We at Trilio think that having that backup recovery solution, especially when it comes to protecting against ransomware attacks, is a day zero or day one task that needs to be done. You know, the earlier you have that done, it's out of the way, and you know that you are protected in the future. So very, very interesting look at that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So with that, we'll go ahead and continue on here, and we'll talk a bit about the challenge that Trilio is looking to solve when it comes to ransomware attacks. Now, the cloud native application challenge when it comes to these ransomware attacks is there's not just one entry point for these malicious actors to get into, but there's actually two. You have your primary storage, which would be your cluster itself. That primary storage sitting on your Kubernetes cluster that could be accessed through a management console, even through a Trilio management console for some reason if they got into it. Any application out there, if they got the right credentials, they could get in. And then also there's that backend storage as well, that S3 or NFS, I'm sure you might already be thinking, is another entry point where a malicious actor might try to get into. And so we at Trilio prioritize solving this challenge here in terms of protecting, at least on our end, the Trilio UI end, if an actor were to get in, to make sure that they couldn't do anything malicious, and then as well as making sure that backup storage media, that S3 or NFS, is protected as well. Now, an approach to solving this ransomware issue and is not just one certain feature. It's a strategy. It's a strategy where you have to go about protecting that data on the cluster itself, the primary storage, and then also that backend storage as well, the NFS or S3. So ransomware protection is more than just one feature. It is a strategy that we have to focus on. And so Trilio focuses on having a comprehensive approach to solving that strategy. Our strategy we've built out is based on NIST cybersecurity framework and the NCCOE best practices. And if you're unfamiliar with these two, the NIST is National Institute of Standards and Technology, and NCCOE is National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. Both these are worldwide recognized institutions that are leading edge when it comes to best practices for preventing a ransomware attack and for recovering from a ransomware attack. So these are the guidelines that we at Trilio follow for our solution. Now, the main components that we've broken down from these two are three different sections here. We have identify and protect. This would be safeguarding those assets, those applications and their data by backing them up before the very first step here. Identify and protect what data in your cluster itself needs to be protected. And that is an approach that we have actually had implemented for a while now, where you can see exactly what applications and what objects you do in fact have protected and which ones you do not. So you know where you are good in terms of backups and where you need to improve. Next step would be detect and mitigate, which would be along the lines of detecting when you see suspicious activity, whether it be in those backups themselves or on the clusters themselves. In the sake of Trilio, because we're a backup and recovery solution, we help you with detecting malicious activity on that backup side. If backups are disrupted, we have strategies to help you see those disruptions happening. And then once you detect a malicious actor, you want to be able to mitigate their access to things. So you can reduce their roles or eliminate entirely. You can guard off backups from each other. So if they were to try to disrupt one, they wouldn't be able to get to another. So this is the second approach. And then our last one here, of course, would be recover. When you have those backups from identifying and protecting, you want to make sure that you can also recover your backups and trust that they are in fact clean backups that you are restoring. You also want to make sure that you have a disaster recovery plan to reduce any RTO in the event of a ransomware attack. And you want to make sure you also conduct isolation testing if an attack were to occur, pulling that application into a testing environment to see exactly where your vulnerabilities are. Trilio can help you with that as well. If there's an attack that occurs, you can capture that application as it stands being compromised, bring it into a test environment, and then figure out where some holes in your security might be. Trilio covers all three of these bases. Now getting a look at the actual features of Trilio and how they fall amongst these three categories. First, we have that identify and protect. As I mentioned before, identifying what applications you have backed up safely and which ones you do not. That is our application discovery feature, where you go into the TBK UI and can immediately see at the application level, at the object level, and at the label level what you have protected, if your last backup was successful, if it was not successful for some reason, and why. You can easily access those logs. We also have security validation. We have those certifications with a few different companies out there: IBM, Red Hat, SUSE Rancher, VMware Tanzu. These all entailed having rigorous security validation tests. So as we have those four, we're going to continue to grow and make sure we get those security validations amongst other distributions as well. Backup immutability. That is a newer feature that's going to be coming out soon. Application discovery and security validation, to clarify, are available today. Some of these features on here most of them are either available today or will be available in our upcoming release 2.5, which is scheduled to release in the next 6 to 9 weeks, I believe it is. So backup immutability is going to be one of those features. That's the second part of our demo we're going to see today, is being able to configure backup immutability with object locking right from the TVK UI. RBAC, we already have instituted encryption. We have the Kubernetes level encryption, but we're increasing our own level of encryption in that new release 2.5 in the coming weeks as well. And that multi-factor authentication will also be coming in that new release in the next 6 to 9 weeks. With detect and mitigate, this gets into, like I said before, monitoring to make sure that you have no malicious activity, or to detect when you do have malicious activity. We're going to be having backup scanning, malware scanning. You can see the third on that list there to detect any of those abnormal events. We also have containment features, which allows you to block off those backups from others so they do not get infected further, or the malicious actor cannot continue to go through Trilio or any of the backup S3 or NFS target. And then we also have, with detect and mitigate, of course, you need to know immediately if any sort of suspicious activity is happening. Someone's in your system that's not supposed to be. And so when it comes to Trilio and those backups, we have notifications and alerts coming in that new release 2.5 as well. Those notifications and alerts can be done through through email or also from Slack as well. And then lastly here, we have the recover piece. Of course, we're back up in recovery, so recovery is very, very important. We're going to be implementing deep logging features with our new release as well, which essentially means that if for some reason a malicious actor was able to disrupt one backup, deep logging allows you to use versioning to find that most recent version that is still safe. And it gets back to that containment piece as well, separating your backups to make sure that you always have one available to have that clean recovery. Isolation testing, as I mentioned before, being able to pull an application that might have been disrupted or corrupted in some way into a testing environment and then testing it there. DR, disaster recovery workflow, we already have a feature for, which allows you to lay out exactly how you want to recover an application from one cluster into a secondary cluster. You can build out that workflow, save it so it's all ready to go, and then in the event of an application failure, an outage, or of course a ransomware attack, you can immediately hit execute and have that application restored into your secondary failover cluster. And then lastly on this list, we have available today and have had available for a long time, multiple targets. So if you're worried about compromising one target being compromised, maybe one S3 bucket being compromised or one NFS server being compromised, you can have multiple targets as well to make sure your backups are always safe. So now I think we have another polling question coming up to give you the audience a chance to interact here.
Yeah,
so question,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
All right, I'll say it. The question is, which component does your organization need to focus on today? The polling question should be on your screen now. The answers that are available to you are identify and protect, detect and mitigate, recover, or all of the above. So you can go ahead and choose your appropriate response. As with the other one, we'll leave the polling question open for a few seconds. And another quick reminder that today's event is being recorded, and Ben has a couple really great, what do you have coming up, Ben? You've got some demos coming up, that's it. And,
yep.
and I'm very excited to see those. But yeah, today's event is being recorded. So if you miss any or all of it, or if you will want to watch the demos again, you will have the opportunity to do so. So that's a bonus there for you. All right, let's go ahead and close out this poll and take a look at the responses. Again, the question was, which component does your organization need to focus on today? Of the responses, 64%, the majority said all of the above. That's great. 20% said identify and protect, and then 8% each said either detect and mitigate or recover. So I guess everybody wants to have their cake and eat it too. What do you think, Ben?
I'm not as surprised about this one at all. I think that's the intelligent and appropriate response from the audience there. All of the above, every single step along the way is extremely important. And especially I can see why that identify and protect would be a little bit higher than B and C, because it is the first step to make sure that you can identify when an issue is arising and make sure that you are ultimately protected. So I can definitely see how that would be the case. But we got a smart audience out there, so it's good to see that all of the is that right one.
Great. Well, I'll put myself back on mute and let you get back to it.
Okay, sounds good. So continuing on here, this is actually the last slide we have of our presentation here, and then we'll be moving to the demo soon. Just a little bit more detail on Trilio when it comes to compatibility. We, as I said before, compatible with any CNCF certified distribution. We do require that you have Kubernetes version 1.17 or higher. This correlates to a few different versions of the other distributions, but as long as Kubernetes is 1.17 and higher, you are all good to go, green lighted for Trilio, which is excellent. For that storage, CSI drivers, we do require a CSI driver with snapshot functionality. If you visit our website, you can find some documentation on how to find out if your CSI driver is compatible with us and if it has that snapshotting functionality. But I will say this, if you're using any of the major distributions out there and you are up to date in your Kubernetes version and your distribution version, you will most likely have access to a compatible CSI driver. All of the big ones out there, Amazon, Google, Red Hat, are all compatible there. For the targets, as I mentioned before, any S3 compatible storage as well as NFS. We actually don't have listed here, but along with that S3 compatible storage, and encapsulates Google Cloud Storage as well. Amazon S3, of course, is there. And then through NFS, we can also use Azure Blob storage if needed for your backup target to store those backups too. A little bit about ecosystem tooling. Trilio is compatible with the major tools out there that integrate directly into the Kubernetes API. We didn't get to talk as much about exactly how Trilio works under the hood today because of our specific ransomware use case today. But what we do in terms of Trilio is packaged as an operator and deploys custom resource definitions, CRDs, directly into that Kubernetes API. So if you are on your command line, you can literally type in kubectl get backups, kubectl get targets. You'll actually see a bit of this on the demo here in a minute. And because of that integration to the Kubernetes API, we're able to be compatible with tools such as Grafana and Prometheus and FluentD. And we even have available some pre-made Grafana dashboards. If that is your preferred way to interact with Trilio, we can get you started that way. These major databases we have here listed in the second to last column, this is not all of the databases that are compatible with Trilio. The majority of the databases out there are compatible with Trilio Vault for Kubernetes. These are just the main ones out here, and these are the ones that we have hooks pre-made for in our documentation. So you can know that if you are a MySQL user, Postgres, MariaDB, any of those out there, MongoDB, we have some documentation to help you get set up with TVK as well. And then lastly, of course, just like before, any cloud we are compatible with, all of the big ones out there, as well as on-prem. So with that, I'll move into our demo. We have two different recorded demos that we're going to show today. I'm going to play this recording, and I'll talk over and talk through what's going on here with the audience. Our first one is we're going to simulate a ransomware attack, as if a malicious user got into a MySQL database, was able to encrypt that data, and then we'll show you what you can do as a Trilio user to restore that data into a separate namespace in the same cluster and immediately have access to it again. Therefore, completely not having to pay any ransom at all, and it allows you to just get access to your data immediately. And then the second demo we're going to be showing will be a alpha release, a sneak peek really at that 2.5 version coming out. in the next 6 to 9 weeks, sometime in September. And we'll show a bit of the object locking in that second demo, showing how you can configure your object locking with an S3 bucket through the actual Trilio UI. Oh, I'll go back here. So here, hopefully everyone can see my screen. I'm sure my moderators will let me know if for some reason you cannot see my screen. I'll go ahead and just get started with playing this demo. So here what's going on is I'm first going to be showing the namespaces where I have my MySQL application already running. You can see this is a Helm deployed application. Use the Helm chart, and we have that MySQL QA Helm chart in there. We just did a get all for the source NS namespace to show those that one MySQL pod. We have one service. Go ahead and pause right there. We have one service. We have one deployment. We have a replica set. We can also see here as we get further down a MySQL QA PVC that is bound using a CSI host paths storage class there, and then the time, the age of it, created about an hour ago. The age would be important so you can know and have proof that when we restore the application that it is new, it's not the same one. And then lastly, you also have here a backup. I did a kubectl get backup right there using that Trilio CRD immediately with the kubectl command to have that flow over seamlessly. And you can see that we're using a MySQL Helm backup, and a MySQL locked backup plan is the name of the backup plan we're using. It's a full backup, and it is an application-based backup, meaning that we selected the Helm chart to do this backup. Now we're going to take a quick look at the other namespace that we're going to be restoring into in the event of doing a restore. You saw that backup was already taken of our source NS namespace, and now we're in the restore failover namespace. So you can see no Helm chart is listed here, nothing. We did a kubectl get all. There's nothing in that namespace, no PVCs in that namespace, and no restores have occurred in that namespace. Now what I'm doing here for the sake of this demo, I'm doing a port forward command to make sure I can get access to my database in my source NS namespace. And here I'm hopping over to MySQL Workbench to look at the data in my MySQL application. Doing a quick select to take a look right here. I want to point out too, I'm going to do a quick pause. Down below, you can see the logs of the actions I'm going through. So right here at 1603, I did the select to go ahead and select and look at this, this database itself, these name values I have in here. And you'll see as we go along, there's no decryption that happens. There's simply a restore that we do to get our data back. So there, the data is intact. It's good to go. But wait, now we have a malicious actor that just got into our cluster. He or she was waiting for a while and waiting until the right time to attack. And now they use a quick little encryption script. Of course, for the sake of the demo, we just did here through MySQL, but they had their own, however complex, encryption script to change and alter the data in my MySQL database sitting in my cluster. Now when I go back over and I look and do a select of those users in that table, it's gibberish. It's nothing. I can't use it. There's none of the names there. It's completely useless. And now that malicious actor is asking me for $300,000 to unlock the data that they have encrypted. Well, luckily, this user here on our demo downloaded Trilio, and they had a successful backup of their MySQL QA application. You can see from the green, we have one backup available. Here, that MySQL Helm backup, the same we saw before in the CLI, and the MySQL locked backup plan is used. We'll do a quick look at the logs here. We had a quiesce there to make sure our database was stable when we did a backup. And you'll see right here that that whole backup took, what we have here, about a couple minutes, not very long at all. Not very long at all for a backup to be taken of this MySQL database. We're using a target called demo S3 locked target, which we'll take a look at later, and just a little peek at the hook that we used as well. Here in the metadata summary, we can see exactly every object that was backed up. You can actually look into the details of those, but you cannot see the details of the secrets for the sake of security reasons. Now here we get a bit into the nitty gritty. What the user just did there is they took a look at the YAML of the backup plan and target itself. Now the reason why I'm looking at this is because I'm going to show you now what happens if a malicious actor not only got access to my data on my cluster, remember that main storage data we had in the first scenario, but they're also going to try to get access to the second entry point, the S3 bucket. They'll try to get in and they will try to disrupt and change or delete your backup so that you are left vulnerable in the event of this ransomware attack. So here we're do a little zoom in so you can see exactly the UID. Pay attention here to the UID of that backup plan, and then we'll also do the backup itself. Of course, I'm not expecting you to memorize the numbers, so I'll go ahead and do a copy here. Now I'm hopping into my S3 bucket. Here I'm using this demo bucket object locked. This is the same that bucket that I'm using for my target itself. And here I'm searching the backup plan UID, and I found it stored here from the backup that I took a few days prior. I'm then searching this backup plan to find the exact backup plan. I only have one in this instance, which of course best practices you have more. But here I'm searching my one backup plan. I found it. Again, imagining that this is the malicious actor getting into your S3 bucket, looking into your Helm folder, diving deeper into this bucket, seeing if they can get to the data files themselves, and there it is. Found the QCOW2 file where all of that data is stored. They're going to try to delete it, and then if it's deleted, then I have no recoverability. I can't recover it. So they're going to go in, try to do a permanent delete. And when that permanent delete is attempted, because we have object locking, it fails. They're unable to actually do a successful delete of this backup on this S3 target because we have object locking enabled on this target. And so they failed to delete the backup itself, and we still have access to it. Here you can quickly see a summary. With Amazon S3, that is, here there's a few different types of retention mode. Here we chose compliance mode, which means that no one, not even admin users. So if for some reason a malicious actor got access to an admin user credentials, they still could not delete that file until the retention period is over, which is 14 days. So now just zooming out here, we're done looking at the YAMLs. Our malicious actor tried to delete the backups and they failed. They weren't able to do so because Trilio properly had that protected on the Amazon S3 side. And now we're going to do, I believe, a restore. Yep, we're going to do a restore of our backup. Imagine now, again, we are the good guys. This is no longer the malicious actor. This is the good guys. This is the one of you who might be using Trilio who saw that ransomware attack occurred, and they're going in and doing a restore into a separate namespace to get back the data that was encrypted. Going to choose to call this restore MySQL restore. We're going to select the restore failover namespace, which, as you remember before, was absolutely empty beforehand. Do a quick flag, skip if already exists. That just makes sure there's no duplications in case the demoer forgot to do a cleanup. Right there, what we just saw, we'll go back for a second. What we just saw was transforms, exclusions, and hooks. In the event of doing a restore, you can alter the metadata of your objects before you restore them. This is most commonly used if you're going from one cluster to another and maybe need to change a storage class. You can institute a transform to change that storage class of your application before it's even restored. And then once it gets restored, it connects to the correct storage class. Exclude resources is just to, exactly as it sounds, exclude certain objects if you want to exclude them from the restore. And a hook allows you to add any sort of script you'd like in there before the restore occurs. So now that restore has started, the logs just pop up after a second there once the restore is started. Go back, do a quick little refresh. And now we see that restore is in progress. We're gonna take a look at it. It's already gotten kicked off, and there it's already past the validation phase into the data restore phase. And it'll take a couple minutes here. And so as that couple minutes occurs, I'm just gonna show you here a few more details of Trilio while we have some time. So here's those backup plans, that same MySQL locked backup plan we saw before. Showing the Helm release, that MySQL QA release that we backed up. With Helm releases, all versions of the Helm chart are backed up, and the most recent release is the one that's deployed in the event of a restore. Just showing you this hook that we had, we decided in this example to do a flush of the tables to lock and unlock them. This is not always necessary by any means, but just for the sake of hook examples, we wanted to show it. Here's how you would add retention policies. And again, remember this demo you were seeing now is the current version of Trilio. And our next demo will look a little bit different, and that's because it's going to be the brand new 2.5 available in a couple weeks. Here's our target we used, demo S3 locked target. Same one we saw that was connected to that bucket in the S3. Just showing the namespaces that are populated here. This is that showing you all the namespaces. That's that application discovery piece. Because we did a backup, I'll stop here for a second. Because we did a backup at the Helm chart level, the entire source namespace, source NS namespace is not backed up. So if that were backed up, it would be green like we saw previously with the Helm chart itself. But that was not the route we decided to take this time. So that is why all of these are white here, indicating that they're not fully backed up. That restore was complete, which is great to see. So we're now going to do that quick refresh and see that restore summary here. Validation, data restore, metadata restore, all completed successfully. We're now going to switch back over to the CLI. We're back on that command line interface, and here in the restore failover namespace, before we had nothing, it was absolutely empty. We're now going to check first that Helm chart, and there's our Helm chart. Successfully deployed just a few minutes ago. We're then going to see here, first you'll see that label that I used previously. The label does change when you restore an application into a different namespace but the same cluster, and this is because cluster scoped resources cannot have the same label. So that is one note to see, but if we remove that label and just see what's in the failover, restore failover namespace, you can see that pod is up and running. Our service is there, deployment is there, all just about a minute old. Replica set, our PVC is bound successfully to the CSI host path storage class. And our restore there was completed, MySQL restore, completed from that source namespace into the current one. And it was an app-based restore. Because that label changes, the name of that service changes as well. Again, that cluster scoped resources, this is best practices to make sure that you do not have the same name of two different objects in the same cluster. So this is why that occurs. And so with just changing that quick little service name and changing my namespace to failover restore, I'm going to do a quick port forward. And so now with that port forward, I'm looking at my MySQL workbench, looking into the restore failover namespace, where I just did my restore of a backup plan that was taken before. Remember that source namespace, absolute gibberish, completely encrypted data, can't read any of it, can't use any of it. Now that we did that restore and connected to our new namespace, we have to do a quick password because we changed the connection. Same password as before as well. Is worth noting. And here we have our data just as it was before. Peter, Smith, Amy, all of our names listed in there, completely unencrypted. And looking down again below at that those logs, you'll see that was no decryption commands that I made, only that encryption, and then searching into my database of my new namespace. So that concludes the first demo we have here. I see we have 15 minutes left, so I'll get right into the second. And this one I will skip ahead a little bit. I just want to show a few of those features. So this is 2.5, the new release we have. And what we have here is the ability to configure those that immutability on those backups with that object locking right here from the Trilio UI. So now what I'm doing is I'm creating a backup plan. I have a different target up there. And what I'm about to do here is put in the max number of incremental backups I want to have. In order to keep backups immutable, you have to have full backups sprinkled in there. So you could schedule to have an incremental backup every single day, but a full backup you want to have every 8 backups or so. And so here we're going to put a max of 8 incremental backups right there. And then we'll make a quick schedule of our full backups and our incremental backups. Here, adding in a full backup policy, very easy to do just from that drop down. Select the time daily in which we want to have a backup, but we don't have to have daily. We could actually do monthly if we wanted to. So here we're choosing monthly on the 10th of every month at, we're going to select here about 12 o'clock, at 12 o'clock every day on the 10th, 12 o'clock of the 10th every month. We're going to do a full backup to make sure that a full backup occurs then, or every 8 incremental backups. So that scheduling policy was successfully updated. We're now going to do our scheduling policy for incremental backups. If you're not familiar with Trilio, incremental backups mean that we're only taking a backup of the data that has changed since the previous day. So for example, if we want to do a backup every day, which is, I believe, what we're doing here, we can decide to have a backup every single day, and we can do incremental. So day 1 will always be a full backup. Day 2 could be incremental. And what it'll do is it'll compare the data that has changed from day 1 to day 2 and only back up that changed data. So this helps keep your backups more compressed. Now we're doing our retention policy. So this retention policy is very, very important because it's going to say how long we want to retain our backups themselves. And so this helps with that immutability piece. This is the piece where we know that we want to retain backups for a given amount of time. And as long as that retention policy is in place, then those backups cannot be deleted. It triggers that object locking in the S3 bucket that we saw before. So here we are saying that the latest 5 backups are always going to be retained. And then we are about done with our backup plan, I believe. Yep, just selecting our Helm release. Here, this user is going in and directly adding the Helm release because, again, we're creating the backup plan this time. So this is how you'd select that Helm release, MySQL DB, a little bit of a different name, different environment, but same concept. So there's just an update saying that backup plan already existed, but here we've created it and updated that backup plan, so it's good to go. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here. Now see, so then if I go back for a second, I'm going to go back into my Home tab. I'm going to go to my backup plan that I just created, Trilio BP. Create that backup, select the backup plan I just made. Go ahead and name my backup. And there it's off and ready to go. And again, those logs pop up just after a second once that backup has started. So now skipping ahead a little bit to when that backup is completed is what we just did. We did a little jump. You can see down in the bottom right here, you have the summary of the selected backup plan, all good to go, full backup that was created. We have some options there to restore, to view the restores, see the status log just as before. Again, remember, this is 2.5. It's a newer version coming out later, so you will see a few little differences in the UI. So here, what I hope he's about to do, there we go. Now that backup is completed, so we're going to hop over to that S3 bucket. This is AJ bucket Trilio that we're using. We're going to go into the backup plan and backup, same as before. Here is the malicious actor, same as before when I did it, trying to get in. But here you can see the object retention. Here is retaining until September 5th. So based on the schedule that we created and keeping those 5 latest backups, Trilio was able to tell the Amazon S3 bucket what sort of object locking they wanted on this particular backup. So we know that this particular file, this backup, is going to be retained until September 5th. Skipping ahead here a little bit for the sake of time. We're also going to try to do a delete here of the backup. So now say, thinking back in terms of a malicious actor coming in, maybe getting access to Trilio. Maybe that's the application that they end up for some reason getting credentials to, and they try to delete that backup. We'll go ahead and try to delete it. It might say successfully delete here on this Trilio UI, but it is actually a soft delete. So you know that if you go back into that S3 bucket, you're actually still going to have access to that object, same as before. Same backup we had before. Now let's say the malicious actor got into the S3 bucket again, just like in my first demo. Now he or she is selecting that piece of data. They're going to go and do a delete on that piece of data. This time you'll notice there's just delete, not permanently delete, because it's a soft delete. It says successful. They think they did it. They think that they were able to do an actual delete of this backup itself. But if we go into the target back in the same file we were in, we can go to show versions. This is what I had toggled in my first demo. And here, Amazon S3 specifically does something called a delete marker, which means that it can appear, there can be a notification of a file being deleted if it was deleted by a user, but it's only actually labeled with a delete marker, which means that it's marked to be deleted. It acts as if it was deleted, but it actually is not. The data is still there. So we're about to see this user do is go in and select the delete marker and go ahead and remove it. Now selected into the delete marker itself. Deleting the marker, and you can see that that backup is still there. Oh, here we go. I was just saying that. There we go. Did a little spin there. Okay, deleting the delete marker now. Going in, deleting that object, permanently delete the delete marker. And then that object will be accessible once again. And there it is. Accessible once again. Show versions is off, and you have this backup here. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up at this point. I want to make sure that we do have a little bit of time for questions. And I see here that my product manager, Prashanta Kochavara, thank you for hopping on. We'll be able to answer a couple of those questions that you might have dropped in that chat. But before I hand it over, just to summarize here what we went through on those demos, what we saw was a simulation of someone going in and encrypting data, excuse me, in one of our clusters, and a Trilio user, one of the good guys, being able to go in and restore that data into a different namespace exactly as it was before the encryption actually happened, completely negating the purpose of the ransomware attack, negating all needs to actually pay that ransom itself. Even if a malicious actor tries to delete the storage on the S3 target itself, they're unable to do so. And then the second demo, you saw that in our new release coming out soon in the next 6 to 9 weeks, as I've mentioned, version 2.5, you're able to actually customize that retention plan based on your retention policy and your schedules and everything. Trilio will automatically tell the S3 bucket what object locking to institute, to have and to make sure that that backup is not deleted, even if it's attempted to be deleted until it's supposed to. So with that, I'll go ahead and move back over here. Again, my name is Ben Morrison. Here, if you scan the QRL, you'll go straight to our website to be able to download a free trial of Trilio. But I will pass it over to see if Prashanto saw any questions there that you'd like to answer at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have about 5 minutes to the top of the hour. So I think we have time for one, maybe two questions, but let's go ahead and dive in. Prashanto, you'll need to take yourself off mute, turn your microphone on. And the question that we have here is, are you FIPS 140-2 compliant and CMVP certified? And I don't think Prashanto has his microphone on. So we may not be able to do this. Let's see.
Well, that's okay. Well, it looks like looking at the chat there.
Yeah, he has audio issues. Okay. All right.
That's fine. What does look like, I'll point out right quickly here. It does seem like in the chat he answered some of those questions. So it looks like PS compliant is yes, and we use SHA 256 ciphers.
All right.
So he answered a few more. We support Ceph CSI, which is great. I don't think I see any other questions in there.
Yeah. Let's see, is the NFS S3 storage immutable, which you actually discussed, I think, in your demo.
Yes.
So that's awesome. Okay. All right, great.
So those backups are immutable.
All right, well then we'll go ahead and cut the question and answer period short. I do believe that that was actually the majority of the questions, but if we didn't get to your question, we didn't ask your question, and it wasn't answered, please know that the folks at Trilio are getting a copy of all the questions that were asked. So I am sure that they're going to be following up with you offline to get your question answered. Also, a quick reminder that today's event has been recorded. So if you missed any or all of the event, or if you just want to watch it again, you will have the opportunity to do so. Following the webinar, we are going to be sending out that email that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And the webinar is also going to be living on the devops.com website. So you can always go look for it there. Just go to devops.com/webinars and look in the on-demand section, and it should be right there waiting for you. Okay, what else? I did mention at the top of the hour we'd be doing a drawing for 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So without further ado, let's go ahead and do that. Let's see. Okay, our first winner is Linda G. Congratulations, Linda. Our second winner is Sudeep P. Congratulations, Sudeep. Our third winner today is Mallory C. Congratulations, Mallory. And our fourth and final winner is Marcello M. Congratulations, Marcello or Marcello. We'll be sending out an email over to you with the gift card information. So please do check your inbox. And if you don't see anything there, please check your spam folder. Ben, what a great presentation. I love to see those demos and lots of great information in today's presentation. So thank you so much for your time, for your expertise. Judging by the questions that did come in, I know the audience got a lot out of it also. So I do appreciate that.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, devops.com, for having us here. Thank you to everyone that was able to attend. I will say, if you want to see some more videos on Trilio, feel free to follow us on YouTube. Just look up Trilio Vault Inc. You'll find our YouTube channel and be able to learn a lot more there, or visit our website, trilio.io.
Nifty. Okay. All right. Great. Well, thanks again. I also want to thank the audience for joining me today. You guys are awesome as always. And but I do appreciate your time to attend today's webinar. And please, whatever you do, stay safe.
Thank you, everyone.